In the vast expanse of the galaxy, where civilizations rise and fall like waves against cosmic shores, there exists a universal truth that every species learns. Appearances can be devastatingly deceiving. The Galactic Council had cataloged thousands of sentient races, each with their strengths, their territories, their place in the grand hierarchy of power. At the bottom of their assessment charts sat a small, blue-green world in an unremarkable spiral arm, Earth. The humans who emerged from this backwater planet seemed laughably fragile. No natural armor, no venomous claws, no psychic abilities that could crush minds across star systems. They were soft, pink creatures who needed artificial clothing to survive their own planet's weather. Their bones broke easily, their skin tore with minimal pressure, and they required constant sustenance and rest of function. When humanity first made contact with the galactic community, seasoned warriors from a dozen different species couldn't help but chuckle. These humans spoke of peace, of cooperation, of building a better future together. They offered gifts instead of tribute, asked questions instead of making demands, and seemed genuinely fascinated by other cultures rather than intimidated by superior firepower. The Zephyrians, with their crystalline exoskeletons that could deflect plasma fire, found it amusing. The Krillax, whose acidic breath could melt through starship hulls, were almost embarrassed by how harmless these newcomers appeared. Even the diplomatic ethereals, masters of mental manipulation, detected no hidden malice or secret weapons in human minds. Just curiosity, hope, and an almost childlike wonder at the vastness of space. For 15 years, humans integrated peacefully into galactic society. They served as mediators, researchers, and explorers. They asked for little and gave much, sharing their art, their music, their peculiar ability to find humor in the darkest situations. They spoke of their history in abstract terms, mentioning wars and conflicts as distant, regrettable chapters they had moved beyond. The galaxy grew comfortable with humanity's weakness, safe in the knowledge that these fragile beings posed no threat to anyone. That comfort would prove to be the greatest tactical error in galactic history. When the first human military units were finally deployed in combat, the universe learned a terrifying truth. Evolution on Earth hadn't produced the galaxy's weakest species. It had forged its most dangerous one. And now, those who had underestimated humanity were about to discover what 15 years of peaceful integration had been hiding. The real question wasn't whether humans could fight. It was whether anyone could survive when they did. Commander Vexhai of the Zephyrian Defense Fleet studied the sensor readings with growing disbelief. The small vessels approaching their border station moved with none of the aggressive patterns typical of raiders or invaders. Instead, they transmitted what appeared to be mathematical sequences, artistic representations, and something their translators were struggling to interpret as music. "Sir, the alien vessels are maintaining a respectful distance of 3 light minutes from our territory," reported Lieutenant Kestar, her crystalline features reflecting the blue glow of the command displays. "They've made no aggressive moves, and continue broadcasting what appears to be peaceful communication attempts." Vexhai's mandibles clicked in contemplation. In his 40 years of military service, he had encountered dozens of first contact scenarios. Most involved posturing, territorial displays, or immediate attempts to establish dominance hierarchies. This was different. Have our xenobiologists made any progress with their transmissions? Preliminary analysis suggests they're attempting to establish mathematical and scientific common ground, sir. The musical transmissions appear to be cultural offerings rather than coded military intelligence. The commander's secondary eyes narrowed as he examined the detailed scans of the alien vessels. The technology was impressive, but not threatening, sleek, efficient designs that spoke of scientific advancement rather than military engineering. Most telling were the life signs aboard each ship. The beings inside seemed remarkably fragile, their biosignatures indicating lightweight frames and delicate physiological systems. "What's the assessment from our tactical division?" Lieutenant Kestar hesitated before responding. "Sir, our analysts believe these beings pose minimal physical threat. Their vessels show no obvious weapon systems. Their biological readings suggest physically weak specimens, and their behavior patterns indicate a passive, possibly fearful disposition." The assessment proved accurate when the first human delegation arrived at Zephyrian Space Dock 3 days later. Ambassador Sarah Chun stepped from her vessel with a small retinue, and Vex-High found himself staring at beings that seemed almost impossibly delicate. They wore artificial coverings over their pale skin, walked upright on two thin legs, and possessed none of the natural weaponry that characterized most galactic species. "Greetings," Ambassador Chen said through her translation device, her voice carrying what sounded like genuine warmth. "We are representatives of Earth and humanity. We come in peace, hoping to establish friendly relations with your people." Vex-High had to suppress an amused, chittering sound. The human barely reached his chest in height, and her thin limbs looked like they could be snapped with minimal pressure. Her species' complete lack of natural defenses was almost endearing in its vulnerability. "Welcome to Zephyrian space, Ambassador Chun," he replied formally. "We are honored by your peaceful approach. It is refreshing to encounter a species that prioritizes diplomacy over displays of strength." Over the following weeks, human ambassadors made contact with 17 different galactic civilizations, and the response was remarkably consistent. The Krillax warlord Brutax laughed openly when he met the human diplomatic team, commenting to his advisors that he could accidentally kill one of these creatures simply by breathing in their direction. The Ethereal Council expressed polite interest, but privately noted that human minds seemed remarkably simple and unguarded compared to other species they had encountered. Even the notoriously paranoid Sikitar Collective, after extensive biological scans, classified humanity as a negligible threat level and placed them in the same category as the peaceful Floran herbivores and the philosophical Quindai scholars. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, humanity's chief xenobiologist, watched these interactions with careful attention from her research station aboard the diplomatic vessel Aurora. She noted how alien species consistently underestimated human physical capabilities, focusing only on immediate visible characteristics while missing subtler indicators of resilience and adaptability. "It's fascinating," she remarked to her colleague, Dr. James Wilson, as they reviewed footage of their latest diplomatic meeting with the Hive Mind Nexus. "They see our lack of claws, armor, or natural weapons as definitive proof of weakness. None of them seem to consider what evolutionary pressures might have shaped us differently." Dr. Wilson nodded, pulling up comparative physiological data on his display. "They're making the same mistake our own ancestors might have made when first encountering persistence hunters. They see the absence of immediate threats rather than recognizing adaptive advantages." The humans' peaceful integration into galactic society proceeded smoothly. They established trade agreements, cultural exchange programs, and research partnerships. Human scientists proved remarkably adept at solving complex problems that had puzzled other species for generations, approaching challenges with what aliens termed unconventional thinking patterns. Captain Maria Santos of the exploration vessel Endeavour became something of a celebrity in galactic circles. Her crew's discovery of 3 new habitable worlds and their innovative solutions to various space exploration challenges earned widespread respect. However, even admirers like the renowned Zephyrian scientist Dr. Yithlon commented privately that humans seemed better suited to intellectual pursuits than any form of physical confrontation. "They're remarkable problem solvers," Dr. Yithlon explained to a gathering of the Scientific Council. "Their pattern recognition abilities are exceptional, and they display unusual creativity in approaching theoretical challenges. However, their physical frailty makes them unsuitable for any form of dangerous work. We should ensure they remain in protected research environments where their intellectual gifts can flourish without risk of injury." The assessment became galactic consensus. Humans were classified as a protected intellectual species, valuable for their minds but requiring safeguarding due to their obvious physical limitations. Military commanders across multiple species agreed that humans should never be placed in combat situations, not out of malice, but from genuine concern for their well-being. Admiral Thekmar of the Krillax War Fleet exemplified this protective attitude during a joint military exercise where human observers were present. "Keep those humans well back from any training scenarios," he instructed his subordinates. "Their bones are probably hollow like those of Varian diplomats. One stray blast from our training weapons could atomize them." The humans themselves seemed to accept these limitations gracefully. They focused on research, exploration, and diplomatic roles while leaving security and military matters to more physically capable species. Ambassador Chen often joked with alien colleagues about humanity's unfortunate lack of natural weaponry, though some observers noted an odd glint in her eyes when she made such comments. This dynamic continued for 15 years. Humans spread throughout galactic space, always in protected roles, always accompanied by security details from other species, always viewed with the same mixture of intellectual respect and physical concern that had characterized first contact. The Terran Science Institute became the galaxy's premier research facility. Human explorers mapped previously unknown regions of space with remarkable efficiency. Human diplomats resolved conflicts between species that had been feuding for centuries. In every peaceful endeavor, humanity excelled beyond expectations. But no alien species ever saw humans in combat. The closest any galactic military had come to witnessing human aggression was during the Sigma Cygni incident, when pirate raiders attacked a joint research station. The human researchers were immediately evacuated to safety while Zephyrian and Krillax security forces dealt with the threat. The few humans who remained behind were found huddled in sealed compartments, apparently terrified by the violence occurring around them. Poor creatures, Commander Vexhai had commented after the incident. They're simply not built for this kind of stress. Look how they shake just from witnessing combat at a distance. What he hadn't noticed was that the shaking humans were vibrating with suppressed adrenaline, their eyes tracking every movement of the battle with the focused intensity of apex predators studying potential prey. What appeared to be fear was actually the barely contained aggression of a species evolved from persistence hunters, forced to remain passive while every instinct screamed for action. Dr. Rodriguez had gripped her observation tablet so tightly during the battle that her knuckles turned white. Later, reviewing security footage, she noticed something that confirmed her growing suspicions about galactic misconceptions. In several frames, human expressions showed not terror, but frustration, the look of soldiers forced to watch a battle they could have ended in minutes. The galactic community remained oblivious to these subtleties. Their assessment of humanity as physically weak and conflict-averse became so entrenched that it influenced policy at the highest levels. The Galactic Council's military planning completely excluded human participation in any form of armed conflict, viewing them as valuable civilians who must be protected at all costs. This protective attitude extended to extreme lengths. When the frontier wars began in the Outer Rim territories, human colonies were evacuated before any fighting reached their systems. Human merchants were given special safe passage documents that explicitly marked them as non-combatants. Human research stations received priority protection details from various alien military forces. The humans accepted these protective measures with gracious thanks and seemingly genuine relief. They spoke eloquently about their preference for peaceful solutions and their gratitude for the galaxy's commitment to safeguarding intellectual species from the horrors of war. But in private communications transmitted on secure channels that alien intelligence services never thought to monitor, a different conversation was taking place. Military leaders who had been relegated to advisory roles in galactic society were quietly comparing notes, analyzing alien combat footage, and developing assessments that would have shocked their protective allies. General Patricia Hayes, formerly of Earth's combined military forces, sent an encrypted message to Colonel Michael Zhang on Kepler Station. Their tactics are conventional but effective within their parameters. Heavy reliance on superior firepower and natural physical advantages. Minimal adaptation to changing battlefield conditions. If we ever have to engage, standard human doctrine should prove adequate. The reply came within hours. Agreed. Their assumption of our weakness has become their greatest vulnerability. They've never adapted to face an opponent who fights like us. These communications remained undetected. The galactic intelligence community had long ago concluded that humans possessed no military secrets worth monitoring. After all, what could a species of fragile academics possibly be planning that would interest real warriors? The question would soon be answered in ways that would reshape galactic civilization forever. The first reports came from the edge of known space, where automated monitoring stations detected massive gravitational disturbances in previously empty sectors. Dr. Yithlon, now serving as chief scientific advisor to the Galactic Council, initially dismissed the readings as equipment malfunctions or natural phenomena. That changed when the monitoring station in the Kepler 442 system went silent. The last transmission was routine, reported intelligence analyst Vorten during the emergency council session. Standard automated updates, normal background radiation readings, then complete silence. No distress signal, no indication of system failure. Admiral Thekmar studied the tactical displays with growing concern. Equipment doesn't just fail that completely. Sent a reconnaissance squadron to investigate. The Krillax reconnaissance team departed within hours, their heavily armored vessels equipped with the most advanced sensors in the galactic fleet. What they found when they reached the Kepler 442 system defied immediate comprehension. The monitoring station was gone. Not destroyed in any conventional sense, but completely absent. Where it had orbited the system's outer planet for 20 years, space was simply empty. More disturbing, detailed scans revealed that approximately 30 cubic kilometers of rock had been carved from the planet's surface with geometric precision. The excavation pattern is unlike anything in our databases, reported Science Officer Kexval. Perfect geometric shapes, no tool marks, no residual energy signatures. Whatever did this possessed technology far beyond our understanding. Admiral Thekmar's armored plates shifted uneasily. Any sign of the perpetrators? Negative, sir. But we're detecting unusual quantum fluctuations throughout the system. Something was here, something large, but it's no longer present. The Admiral ordered immediate withdrawal and maximum alert status throughout the fleet. Within days, similar reports began arriving from across the galactic frontier. Entire installations vanishing without trace. Perfect geometric excavations appearing on uninhabited worlds, and always the same quantum signature lingering in the affected areas. The crisis deepened when the first populated world was attacked. Colony Sigma 7, home to 50,000 Zephyrian civilians and a small defensive garrison, transmitted a frantic distress call before falling silent. The relief force that arrived 12 hours later found a scene that would haunt galactic military commanders for years to come. The colony was gone. Every building, every person, every trace of civilization had been removed with the same geometric precision observed at previous sites. The planet's surface showed a perfectly circular excavation 3 kilometers deep and 20 kilometers across. At the center of the excavation, a single message had been carved into the bedrock in symbols that matched no known galactic language. But the most unsettling discovery was the quantum residue analysis. The energy signatures indicated that whatever had caused this destruction possessed technology that operated on principles beyond current galactic understanding. Dr. Yithlon's preliminary assessment was grimly simple. We are facing a force that can manipulate matter and energy at the quantum level. Our conventional weapons and defenses may prove entirely ineffective. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Representatives from every major species attended, their usual political divisions forgotten in the face of this unprecedented threat. Admiral Thekmar presented the military assessment with characteristic directness. We're calling them the Omega for lack of a better designation. They possess technology that allows them to disintegrate matter at the molecular level, transport massive objects across interstellar distances, and operate completely undetected until they choose to act. Traditional military doctrine appears useless against such capabilities. Commander Vexhai added his own disturbing observations. Analysis of attack patterns suggests they're conducting systematic harvesting operations. They target population centers, industrial facilities, and research installations. Whatever they're collecting, they need large quantities of it. The ethereal representative, Mindkeeper Zalthara, shared the most chilling discovery of all. We attempted mental contact with the quantum residue left at attack sites. The psychic impressions we detected suggest intelligence, but not as we understand it. These beings think in patterns completely alien to organic consciousness. They view other species as we might view raw materials. Fear settled over the council chamber like a suffocating blanket. Every representative understood the implications. If the Omega could harvest entire colonies without resistance, nowhere in galactic space was truly safe. Ambassador Chen sat quietly through most of the briefing, her expression carefully neutral. Unlike her alien colleagues, she showed no signs of panic or desperation. When called upon to speak, her response was measured and thoughtful. Earth expresses deep condolences for the losses suffered by all affected species, she said formally. We stand ready to provide any assistance within our capabilities to help address this crisis. Several council members nodded politely, but no one seriously considered what assistance humanity could provide. The Omega represented a military threat beyond anything the galaxy had faced, and everyone knew humans had no military capabilities to speak of. Admiral Thekmar was more direct. Ambassador Chun, we appreciate the sentiment, but this situation requires combat capabilities your species simply doesn't possess. We'll ensure human colonies receive priority evacuation if the threat spreads to your territories. Of course, Ambassador Chun replied smoothly. We understand our limitations. However, our scientists would be interested in studying any data you're willing to share. Perhaps fresh perspectives might prove useful. The offer was accepted mainly out of politeness. Detailed sensor data from Omega attack sites was transmitted to human research facilities, where teams of scientists began analysis with their characteristic thoroughness. What those scientists discovered would have profoundly disturbed the Galactic Council if they had been informed. Dr. Rodriguez, leading the analysis team at the Terran Science Institute, found patterns in the Omega attacks that alien investigators had missed. They're not random, she explained to her colleagues during a secured conference call. Look at the targeting priorities. They hit defensive installations first, then communication networks, then population centers. These aren't harvesting operations. They're systematic elimination campaigns. Dr. Wilson highlighted specific details from his analysis. The quantum signatures show deliberate manipulation designed to terrorize. They could disintegrate matter instantly, but they're choosing to work slowly enough for sensors to detect the process. They want other species to know what happened. General Hayes joined the discussion from her advisory position on Luna Station. The tactical pattern is clear. They're softening resistance through psychological warfare before advancing to more strategically valuable targets. Classic predatory behavior. Eliminate the weak to demoralize the strong. Question is, added Colonel Zhang, how long before they move against core systems instead of frontier colonies? The answer came sooner than expected. The Omega attack on Zephyrian Prime, the heart of one of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations, began without warning on a quiet morning when merchant traffic was at its heaviest. The first sign of trouble was the sudden silence of orbital traffic control. Within minutes, massive geometric shapes began materializing in the upper atmosphere, structures that defied conventional physics, seemingly constructed from crystallized space itself. Commander Vex High, now promoted to Supreme Fleet Commander, watched helplessly as a civilization's greatest stronghold came under attack. The Zephyrian Defense Fleet, 5,000 ships strong and equipped with weapons capable of cracking planets, opened fire with everything they possessed. Their weapons passed harmlessly through the Omega constructs, as if firing at empty space. Meanwhile, geometric patterns of disintegration began spreading across the planet's surface. Entire city districts vanished in perfect circles, leaving behind only those precisely carved excavations that had become the Omega's signature. All weapons ineffective, reported Fleet Captain Hesvar, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. Enemy constructs are not registering as solid matter, but they're definitely affecting the planet. Requesting new orders. Vexi had no orders to give. Every military protocol in their databases assumed enemies that followed conventional physics. Against foes who could selectively interact with matter while remaining incorporeal to attacks, traditional warfare was meaningless. The assault on Zephyrian Prime lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the planet's surface had been systematically excavated, its population of 2 billion beings simply gone. The crystalline structures in orbit dissolved back into quantum foam, leaving no trace except the characteristic energy signature that had become synonymous with absolute hopelessness. News of Zephyrian Prime's fall sent shockwaves throughout galactic civilization. If the Omega could destroy the galaxy's most heavily defended world without taking a single casualty, what hope did anyone have? Panic spread through core systems as military commanders realized the futility of conventional resistance. Fleet after fleet reported the same devastating results. Weapons that passed through enemy targets harmlessly while watching their own worlds carved apart with geometric precision. The Krillax attempted a massive coordinated strike against Omega forces attacking an outer rim system. 3,000 of their most powerful warships concentrated their fire on a single enemy construct. The beams passed through the target without effect, while return fire from the construct vaporized 2/3 of the attacking fleet in seconds. Admiral Thekmar's final transmission was brief and bitter. Conventional military doctrine is useless. We need new approaches or the galaxy falls. In the aftermath of these disasters, the Galactic Council reconvened in a state of barely controlled desperation. Every major military force had been bloodied, every defensive strategy had failed, and the Omega continued their systematic harvesting of populated worlds. Ambassador Chen listened to the reports of mounting casualties with the same careful expression she had worn since the crisis began. When the Council turned to desperate measures, proposals for mass evacuations to intergalactic space, suggestions of surrender negotiations, even discussions of species-wide suicide, rather than face whatever fate the Omega intended, she finally spoke. Perhaps, she said quietly, it's time to consider alternatives that haven't been tried yet. The chamber fell silent. Every eye turned to the human ambassador, though most expressions reflected curiosity rather than hope. What could the galaxy's most fragile species possibly suggest that military minds from dozens of warrior cultures hadn't already considered? Do you have specific recommendations, Ambassador? Asked Mindkeeper Zalthara with polite skepticism. Ambassador Chun smiled, and for the first time since the crisis began, something predatory flickered behind her eyes. Actually, yes, but they would require the Council to reconsider certain assumptions about human capabilities. The statement hung in the air like a challenge. Around the chamber, representatives from species that had protected humanity for 15 years struggled to understand what assistance these delicate academics could possibly provide against a threat that had neutered the galaxy's greatest military forces. They were about to learn that their protective instincts had been built on a fundamental misunderstanding of what they were protecting the galaxy from. The silence that followed Ambassador Chen's statement stretched uncomfortably long. Council members exchanged glances that ranged from polite confusion to barely concealed desperation. Finally, Admiral Korthek of the SE Qatar Collective voiced what everyone was thinking. Ambassador Chun, we appreciate any insights humanity might offer, but we must be realistic about capabilities. The Omega have neutralized weapons systems that could level continents. What exactly could your people contribute to a military situation of this magnitude? Ambassador Chen's smile widened slightly, taking on a quality that several sensitive species in the chamber found oddly unsettling. Admiral, I think there's been a fundamental misunderstanding about human military capabilities. For the past 15 years, we've been operating under what we call diplomatic protocols, behavioral guidelines designed to facilitate peaceful integration with galactic civilization. Dr. Yithlan's crystalline features shifted in confusion. Diplomatic protocols? Are you suggesting your people have been holding back somehow? In a manner of speaking, Chun activated her personal display, showing tactical data that made several military commanders lean forward with sudden interest. You see, you've been evaluating human military potential based on observation of our civilian populations and diplomatic personnel. None of you have ever seen what happens when we actually fight. The data streams flowing across Chen's display showed movement patterns, reaction times, and coordination metrics that seemed impossible for the fragile beings the galaxy had grown accustomed to protecting. Commander Vexhai studied the numbers with growing disbelief. These readings, they suggest combat effectiveness levels comparable to Krillak's shock troops. But we've scanned human physiology extensively. Your bone density, muscle mass, reaction speeds, none of it supports these performance indicators. Ah, Chun said, her tone taking on an almost pedagogical quality. You've been measuring the wrong things. You focused on raw physical parameters while missing the adaptational advantages that evolution actually selected for on Earth. She gestured, and new data appeared, historical information that painted a very different picture of human development than what galactic xenobiologists had assumed. Let me tell you about our homeworld, Admiral. Earth isn't a garden paradise where peaceful intellectuals evolved in harmony with nature. It's a death world where everything evolved specifically to kill everything else. For millions of years, survival required not just intelligence, but the ability to outthink, outmaneuver, and outlast predators that were faster, stronger, and better armed than we were. Dr. Yithlan's voice carried a note of scientific intrigue. But your species shows clear adaptations for cooperation and peaceful coexistence. Your social behaviors suggest evolution in low-conflict environments. We cooperate because cooperation makes us more effective killers, Chen replied matter-of-factly. Every human social behavior you've interpreted as peaceful has a military application. Our pack bonding creates unbreakable unit cohesion. Our emotional empathy allows perfect prediction of enemy behavior. Our creative problem solving means we adapt to any threat faster than our opponents can respond to our adaptations. The chamber had grown very quiet. Several species with enhanced sensory capabilities were beginning to detect subtle changes in the humans present. Posture shifts that spoke of coiled readiness, micro-expressions that suggested barely contained aggression. Ambassador Chun continued her presentation with clinical detachment. The Omega possess superior technology, but they're fighting according to predictable patterns. They rely on technological supremacy rather than tactical flexibility. Against opponents who match their approach, standoff weapons, force-on-force engagement, conventional physics applications, they're unbeatable. And humans would fight differently? Admiral Thekmar asked, though his tone suggested he was beginning to suspect the answer. Humans don't fight fair, Admiral. We never have. When our ancestors encountered predators with superior physical capabilities, we didn't try to outmuscle them. We used their strengths against them, exploited their behavioral patterns, and turned their advantages into vulnerabilities. The Omega are just another apex predator, and we've been dealing with apex predators since before we learned to make fire. Chen's presentation shifted to tactical analyses that made the assembled military leaders straighten with sudden attention. The data showed Omega attack patterns broken down into predictable cycles, technological capabilities assessed for exploitable weaknesses, and behavioral tendencies mapped against historical Earth military doctrines. They're hunters, but they're specialized hunters, Chen explained. Their entire approach depends on technological superiority against conventionally armed opponents. They've never faced prey that refuses to engage on their terms. Minekeeper Zalthara attempted a telepathic probe of Chen's thoughts and recoiled sharply. Your mental patterns, they're not what we've observed in other humans. There's a predatory focus we never detected before. Because you never saw us when hunting protocols were active, Chen replied. For 15 years, we've maintained peaceful facades because integration with galactic civilization served our interests. But when survival is at stake, those facades become unnecessary. She made a gesture, and every human in the chamber underwent a subtle but unmistakable transformation. Postures shifted from diplomatic deference to predatory alertness. Eyes that had seemed soft and gentle now held the focused intensity of apex hunters evaluating prey. Voices lost their careful diplomatic modulation, becoming crisp and precisely controlled. The change was so complete that several council members instinctively stepped backward. These were not the same creatures they had protected and coddled for a decade and a half. These were something else entirely. General Patricia Hayes materialized on the main display via quantum communication link, her appearance causing another stir of confusion. Instead of the advisory role uniform she had worn for years, she was dressed in military gear that spoke of serious combat experience. Council members, Hayes said without preamble, we've been conducting detailed analysis of Omega capabilities since the crisis began. Our assessment is that they're vulnerable to human military doctrine, but only if we're allowed to implement it properly. Admiral Korthek found his voice with difficulty. General Hayes, our records show you as a research advisor. We weren't aware humans maintained active military ranks. Hayes' smile was sharp enough to cut. Admiral, we've maintained active military capabilities since before we made contact with galactic civilization. We've simply kept them discreet. Standard procedure when integrating with potentially hostile civilizations. The implications hit the chamber like a physical blow. Dr. Yithlon's voice cracked slightly as he asked, "Are you saying your entire species has been conducting covert military operations within our borders for 15 years? Not operations," Ambassador Chen corrected. Preparation. We've been studying every species, every technology, every military doctrine in galactic space. Standard human intelligence gathering protocols when entering unknown territory. We needed to understand what we were dealing with before revealing our actual capabilities. Commander Vexhai's armored plates were clattering with barely suppressed alarm. How many humans are actually trained combat personnel? All of them, Hayes replied simply. Mandatory military service is universal on Earth. Every human you've met, from scientists to artists to diplomats, has completed combat training equivalent to your elite special forces. We've been playing roles for your benefit, not ours. The council chamber erupted in chaos as representatives realized the full scope of their miscalculation. Species that had spent 15 years protecting humanity from galactic threats suddenly understood they had been sheltering the most dangerous military force in known space. But Ambassador Chen wasn't finished with the revelations. The Omega present an extinction-level threat to galactic civilization, she said, her voice cutting through the chaos with authority that brooked no argument. Traditional military responses have failed because you're fighting them on their terms. We propose to engage them on ours. Which means what, exactly? Demanded Admiral Thekmar, his earlier protective attitude replaced by wary respect. Asymmetric warfare. We don't meet their technology with superior technology. We make their technology irrelevant. We don't engage their strengths. We force them to fight in areas where we have advantages. We don't give them time to adapt. We hit them faster and harder than their decision-making cycles can process. Chen activated a new display showing proposed human military deployments that made every alien military commander in the chamber study the data with growing amazement and concern. We've identified 17 tactical vulnerabilities in Omega operational patterns. Their quantum manipulation technology requires specific energy conditions to function. Their matter disintegration weapons have limited targeting parameters. Their dimensional shifting abilities follow predictable mathematical patterns. All of these can be exploited, but only by forces trained in human combat doctrine. General Hayes continued the briefing with technical details that revealed the depth of human military preparation. We spent 15 years developing countermeasures for every military technology in galactic space. The principles apply to Omega capabilities as well. We can neutralize their technological advantages, but we'll need unrestricted operational authority to implement necessary tactics. The phrase, unrestricted operational authority, sent another wave of unease through the chamber. Several species recognized it as military terminology for removing all ethical and legal constraints from combat operations. Admiral Korthek voiced the concern everyone was feeling. What exactly would unrestricted operations entail? Ambassador Chen's expression became absolutely neutral in a way that somehow seemed more threatening than any show of aggression. Admiral, the Omega are conducting genocide against galactic civilization. They've proven immune to conventional military response. At this point, stopping them requires methods that your species might find disturbing. HFY, comment avec demandait. Human warfare evolved on a planet where mercy was extinction and hesitation meant death. We don't fight to establish dominance or capture territory. We fight to eliminate threats completely and permanently. If you authorize human military intervention against the Omega, understand that we will not stop until every trace of their presence is removed from this galaxy. The chamber fell silent again as the implications sank in. The aliens had spent 15 years protecting what they thought was a fragile, peaceful species from the dangers of galactic civilization. Now they were being offered salvation by the same species, but only if they were willing to unleash something that might prove more dangerous than the threat they faced. Mindkeeper Zalthara attempted another telepathic probe and immediately severed the connection with what might have been fear. Your thoughts, when you speak of warfare, your mental patterns become indescribable, like staring into some vast predatory intelligence that sees everything as potential prey. That's an accurate assessment, Chen acknowledged. It's what kept our species alive long enough to develop civilization. The question now is whether you want that predatory intelligence working for you or whether you prefer to face the Omega with conventional forces that have already proven inadequate. The choice was stark and unavoidable. Accept help from beings they now realized have been deceiving them for 15 years, or face extinction at the hands of an enemy their own forces couldn't touch. Admiral Thekmar spoke for the entire council when he asked the question that would determine the galaxy's fate. If we authorize human military intervention, what guarantee do we have that you won't turn those same capabilities against us afterward? Ambassador Chen's smile returned, cold and predatory and absolutely honest for the first time since the crisis began. You don't. The silence that followed Ambassador Chen's final statement stretched for nearly a full minute. Around the council chamber, representatives from dozens of species grappled with an impossible choice: certain extinction at the hands of the Omega or uncertain survival under the protection of predators they had fundamentally misjudged. Admiral Thekmar, was the first to break the silence. You're asking us to trust our survival to beings who have been deceiving us for 15 years. No, Chun corrected, her tone clinical. I'm offering you the only chance your species have to continue existing. Trust is irrelevant. The mathematics of survival are very simple. Authorize human military intervention, or watch galactic civilization get harvested one world at a time. Commander Vexai's mandibles clicked in agitation. And after the Omega are defeated, what happens to the rest of us then? General Hayes answered from her display link, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to making life and death decisions. Commander, we've coexisted peacefully with galactic civilization for 15 years while possessing the capability to conquer it at any time. If we wanted your territories or resources, we would have taken them already. Our objectives have always been defensive, ensuring human survival and prosperity. Those objectives don't change after we deal with the Omega. But your capabilities do, observed Dr. Yithlon. Once you reveal your true military strength, the galactic balance of power shifts permanently. The balance already shifted, Chin pointed out. The moment the Omega appeared, every military force in this galaxy became obsolete except ours. We're not creating a new dynamic. We're acknowledging one that already exists. Mindkeeper Zalthara attempted to project calm through the chamber's telepathic networks, but even her mental voice carried tremors of uncertainty. This decision affects trillions of beings across hundreds of worlds. We need more than assurances. We need concrete guarantees of post-conflict intentions. Ambassador Chun exchanged glances with General Hayes before responding. We can provide operational protocols, rules of engagement guidelines, and post-conflict transition plans. But understand that those documents will be written by the same people you've just discovered have been maintaining false identities for 15 years. Paper guarantees from proven deceivers aren't worth much. The brutal honesty of the statement actually seemed to reassure several council members. Admiral Kortek nodded slowly. At least you're not insulting our intelligence by pretending otherwise. What specific capabilities are you offering? Hayes activated tactical displays that made every military commander in the chamber lean forward with professional interest and growing alarm. Rapid deployment forces equipped with technologies that exploit Omega vulnerabilities. Quantum interference generators that disrupt their matter manipulation abilities. Dimensional anchor systems that prevent their phase-shifting escapes. Adaptive countermeasure platforms that evolve faster than their tactical responses. Technologies we've never seen before, Commander Vexai observed. How long have you been developing these systems? Since first contact, Hayes replied matter-of-factly. Standard human protocol when encountering unknown civilizations is immediate development of countermeasures for any technologies observed. We've been building weapons specifically designed to neutralize every military system in galactic space. Another wave of unease swept through the chamber. Dr. Yithlon's voice carried a note of scientific fascination mixed with horror. You've been preparing to fight us from the moment we met. We've been preparing to survive contact with you, Chin corrected. There's a difference, though the practical outcomes might appear similar. Peaceful coexistence was always our preferred option. It's more efficient than conquest and less resource-intensive than occupation. But survival always takes priority over preference. The debate continued for hours as species representatives struggled with the implications of authorizing military action by beings they now realized had been evaluating them as potential threats for 15 years. But in the end, mathematics trumped philosophy. Reports continued arriving of new Omega attacks, each one carving away more of galactic civilization's foundation. The turning point came when the ethereal conclave fell. The most psychically advanced species in known space, masters of mental manipulation and dimensional perception, simply vanished overnight. Their homeworld's entire star system showed the now familiar geometric excavations, but on a scale that dwarfed previous attacks. 16 billion ethereals. Mindkeeper Zalthara announced, her mental voice hollow with grief. Gone without even time to send a distress signal. If they couldn't resist or escape, none of us can. The vote, when it finally came, was unanimous. The first human military vessels appeared in galactic space 6 hours after authorization was granted. They materialized without warning in orbit around Luna Station, their signatures unlike anything in galactic databases. Where alien ships were clearly technological constructs, these vessels seemed to blur the line between machine and organism, their hulls flowing and adapting in real time to optimal configurations. General Hayes transferred from Luna Station to the command vessel Retribution, where she was joined by officers whose very presence radiated lethal competence. Colonel Michael Zhang, Admiral Sarah Cross, Lieutenant Colonel David Park. Names that had appeared in galactic records as research advisors and cultural attaches, now revealed as humanity's most experienced combat commanders. Fleet Status Report. Hayes requested as she assumed command. 12 hunter-killer squadrons deployed across predicted Omega approach vectors, reported Admiral Cross. Quantum interference networks active in 17 star systems. Dimensional anchor fields at maximum dispersal. All units report ready for immediate engagement. The transformation was so complete that alien observers monitoring human communications struggled to reconcile these crisp, professional exchanges with the gentle academics they had known for 15 years. These were clearly the voices of beings bred for warfare, comfortable with violence in ways that peaceful species couldn't comprehend. The first engagement came when Omega forces attacked the Proxima Centauri research station. Instead of the usual pattern, helpless defenders watching their weapons pass harmlessly through enemy constructs, something unprecedented occurred. The human response was immediate and devastating. Quantum interference generators disrupted the Omega's matter manipulation technology, forcing their constructs into normal space where conventional weapons could target them. Dimensional anchors prevented their characteristic retreat into quantum foam, and adaptive countermeasure systems analyzed and neutralized their defensive protocols faster than their artificial intelligence could generate new ones. The battle lasted 17 minutes. When it ended, the Omega Force had been completely destroyed, their crystalline constructs reduced to free-floating particles that were immediately collected for analysis by human science teams. Commander Vex High, monitoring the engagement from his flagship, watched the tactical replay with growing disbelief. They didn't just defeat the Omega, they made it look effortless. How is that possible? Dr. Rodriguez, now revealing her role as a military intelligence analyst, explained while reviewing combat data. The Omega rely on technological superiority, but they're essentially one-trick predators. Once you understand their methods and develop appropriate countermeasures, they become vulnerable to conventional tactics. The key was forcing them to fight in normal space, where their advantages disappear. But the real revelation came when human forces captured intact Omega technology. Within hours, human scientists had not only reverse-engineered the quantum manipulation principles, but improved on them. The speed of technological adaptation was so rapid that galactic observers began to suspect it was somehow accelerated beyond natural learning curves. How are you analyzing their technology so quickly? Dr. Yithlon asked during a joint science briefing. Dr. Rodriguez smiled with the same predatory satisfaction that all humans now displayed. Because we've been studying quantum manipulation for 60 years. The Omega didn't invent these principles. They're just using them more efficiently than we had managed previously. Their attack gave us the final pieces of research we needed to perfect our own applications. The admission sent shock waves through the scientific community. Humans hadn't just been hiding military capabilities. They had been conducting advanced research that exceeded anything galactic science had achieved. Technologies that alien civilizations had struggled with for centuries, humans had apparently mastered in secret. Admiral Thekmar voiced the question that was troubling every military commander in the galaxy. What else have you been developing that we don't know about? General Hayes' response was delivered with clinical precision. Technology sufficient to ensure human survival against any conceivable threat. That's always been our primary objective. The Omega responded to their initial defeat by escalating their attacks, hitting multiple systems simultaneously with larger forces equipped with adaptive countermeasures. But human military doctrine proved superior at adaptation. Each Omega technological improvement was met within hours by new human countermeasures, while human tactical evolution outpaced Omega response times by orders of magnitude. The pattern became clear. The Omega were apex predators accustomed to technological supremacy against conventionally armed prey. Against opponents who could match their technology while exceeding their adaptability, they began losing consistently. But human forces didn't just defeat Omega attacks. They began hunting them proactively. Using captured Omega technology to trace quantum signatures back to their sources, human hunter-killer squadrons began striking at Omega staging areas and resource harvesting operations. The asymmetric warfare that Ambassador Chun had promised proved devastatingly effective. Instead of waiting for attacks to develop, human forces eliminated threats before they could manifest. The campaign's turning point came when human intelligence located what appeared to be a primary Omega construction facility in an empty region of intergalactic space. Rather than reporting the discovery and requesting fleet support, the human commander made a decision that exemplified their species' approach to warfare. Admiral Cross launched an immediate strike with everything she had. 12 human vessels against a construction facility the size of a small moon, defended by Omega forces that had never experienced defeat in conventional space. The engagement should have been suicide. Instead, it became the most decisive victory in galactic military history. Human ships phased in and out of normal space using perfected dimensional technology, striking with weapons that combine matter manipulation with antimatter charges and quantum disruptors. They fought like apex predators that had evolved beyond physical limitations, using the Omega's own techniques against them with ruthless efficiency. When the battle ended 8 hours later, the Omega construction facility was completely destroyed, along with every defending unit. Human casualties were exactly 0, though 3 vessels required extensive repairs. More importantly, analysis of the destroyed facility revealed the Omega's strategic weakness. They were not an infinite force. They were a finite civilization that had overextended themselves through rapid expansion, relying on technological supremacy to overcome numerical disadvantages. Take away that supremacy, and they became vulnerable to conventional strategic warfare. General Hayes delivered her assessment to the Galactic Council with characteristic directness. The Omega are not invincible. They're just well-armed scavengers who have been preying on civilizations unprepared for their specific capabilities. Now, though we understand their methods and have developed countermeasures, they could be defeated systematically. But her next statement chilled alien observers to their cores. Of course, the question remains what to do with their technology once we've eliminated them. The quantum manipulation principles they've been using have applications far beyond warfare. Applications that would essentially make conventional galactic military forces obsolete. The implication was crystal clear. Humanity wasn't just offering to save galactic civilization from the Omega threat. They were announcing their emergence as the galaxy's new apex predator. And, unlike the Omega, humans had proven they could coexist peacefully with other species. Whether they would choose to continue that coexistence after achieving technological supremacy remained an open question. The final phase of the Omega War lasted 3 months and reshaped the fundamental nature of galactic civilization. What began as humanity's promise to eliminate an extinction threat evolved into a comprehensive campaign that redefined what was possible in interstellar warfare. Human forces didn't simply defeat Omega attacks. They systematically dismantled the entire Omega civilization. Using captured quantum manipulation technology and reverse-engineered dimensional shifting capabilities, human hunter-killer squadrons pursued, fleeing Omega forces across multiple galaxy clusters. No hiding place proved sufficient. No defensive position remained secure. Admiral Cross stood on the bridge of the Retribution as her fleet materialized in the Omega home system, a region of space so distant from the galactic core that conventional navigation would have required centuries to reach it. The human fleet had made the journey in 18 hours using perfected dimensional jump technology. Target analysis complete, reported Colonel Zhang. Omega Prime appears to be a constructed system. Artificial planets orbiting a harnessed stellar core. Population estimates suggest approximately 50 billion Omega entities across 12 primary worlds. General Hayes reviewed the tactical data with the same clinical detachment she had shown throughout the campaign. Assessment of defensive capabilities, extensive quantum manipulation networks, dimensional phase generators, and what appears to be stellar-scale matter conversion technology. They've essentially weaponized their entire star system. Admiral Cross nodded grimly. Time to end this. The Battle of Omega Prime lasted 14 hours and served as humanity's final demonstration of what they had become during 15 years of peaceful integration with galactic civilization. Human vessels phased through solid matter, using perfected dimensional technology, struck with weapons that rewrote the fundamental laws of physics in localized space, and coordinated with precision that suggested a hive mind operating across multiple dimensions simultaneously. But the most disturbing aspect wasn't the technology, it was the strategic ruthlessness. Human forces didn't seek to capture Omega technology or territory. They systematically eliminated every trace of Omega civilization, converting entire planets into quantum foam and dispersing the energy across multiple dimensions where it could never be recovered or reconstructed. When the battle ended, the Omega home system was simply gone. Not destroyed in any conventional sense, but erased from existence so completely that space-time itself showed no evidence that anything had ever occupied those coordinates. Dr. Rodriguez transmitted the final report from her science vessel as human fleets began the journey back to galactic space. Omega civilization eliminated with zero probability of reconstruction. All quantum signatures dispersed below detectable thresholds. Threat assessment: extinct. The news reached the Galactic Council 6 days later, carried by human vessels that materialized in orbit around every core world simultaneously. The message was brief and delivered with characteristic human directness. The Omega threat has been eliminated, announced Ambassador Chun during an emergency council session. Galactic civilization is secure. Human forces are returning to previous deployment patterns. The chamber erupted in celebration, relief, and underlying terror. Commander Vexhi voiced what everyone was thinking. How do we know the Omega are actually gone? Previous civilizations claimed to have defeated them, only to face renewed attacks years later. General Hayes answered from her command link, her expression carrying the satisfaction of a predator that had successfully eliminated competition. Commander, humans don't defeat threats. We remove them completely. The Omega aren't regrouping somewhere beyond our reach. They no longer exist in any form that could threaten anyone, ever. The finality of the statement silenced the chamber. These weren't beings who fought wars for territory or resources. They were exterminators who eliminated threats to their survival with systematic completeness. Dr. Yithlon managed to ask the question that terrified every non-human present. What happens now? You've demonstrated capabilities that exceed anything in galactic civilization. What are your intentions for the future? The answer came not from Ambassador Chun or General Hayes, but from a new voice that materialized on the Council's main display. Secretary General Maria Santos, identified in galactic records as Earth's civilian leader, but now clearly revealed as something far more significant. Our intentions remain what they have always been, Santos said with calm authority. Human survival and prosperity achieved through the most efficient means available. For 15 years, that has meant peaceful integration with galactic civilization. Recent events don't change our fundamental objectives. Admiral Thekmar's voice cracked slightly as he asked, but surely the balance of power has shifted. You possess technologies that make conventional military forces obsolete. How do we coexist with such disparity? Secretary General Santos smiled, and for the first time since the crisis began, the expression seemed genuinely warm rather than predatory. Admiral, you've been asking the wrong question. The balance of power didn't shift recently. You've simply become aware of a balance that existed all along. For 15 years, humans have possessed the capability to conquer galactic civilization whenever we chose. We haven't chosen to because conquest is inefficient compared to cooperation. She activated displays showing comprehensive analyses of galactic civilizations that revealed the depth of human intelligence gathering over the past decade and a half. We've studied every species, every technology, every military capability in known space. Not because we planned conquest, but because we needed to understand what we were dealing with. Standard human survival protocol when entering unknown territory. The data was staggering in its completeness. Human intelligence had penetrated every major government, mapped every military installation, and developed countermeasures for every weapon system in galactic space. They hadn't been hiding their capabilities. They had been conducting the most comprehensive strategic assessment in galactic history. The question isn't whether humans can dominate galactic civilization, Santos continued. The question is whether we want to, and the answer is no. Dominance requires resources that could be better spent on exploration, research, and expansion beyond this galaxy. cooperation remains more efficient than conquest. Minekeeper Zalthara attempted a telepathic probe of Santos and immediately recoiled. Your thought patterns, they're not like other humans I've encountered. There's something vast and calculating that sees civilizations the way others see chess pieces. Accurate assessment, Santos acknowledged. Human leadership evolved specifically to manage complex strategic scenarios across multiple generations. We think in terms of species survival over cosmic timescales, not quarterly profit reports or electoral cycles. That perspective tends to prioritize long-term cooperation over short-term domination. But her next statement revealed the harder edge beneath diplomatic language. However, understand that cooperation is a choice, not a weakness. What happened to the Omega demonstrates what occurs when that choice is removed. The implication hung in the chamber like a sword. Humanity was offering continued peaceful coexistence, but only as long as it served their interests. Cross them, and galactic civilization could face the same systematic elimination that had befallen their enemies. Admiral Korthek asked the practical question, what specific arrangements are you proposing for ongoing relations? Essentially what we've had for 15 years, Santos replied, but with honest acknowledgement of actual capabilities. Humans continue serving as explorers, researchers, and mediators. Alien species continue providing cultural diversity, specialized knowledge, and expanded perspectives. Everyone benefits from cooperation. But under human hegemony, Commander Vexhai observed. Under human protection, Santos corrected. There's a difference, though the practical outcomes might appear similar. We're not interested in ruling alien civilizations. We're interested in ensuring that nothing threatens the stability we've all built together. Dr. Rodriguez joined the discussion with scientific data that revealed another layer of human planning. Analysis of galactic threat patterns over the past millennium shows cyclical extinction events every few thousand years. The Omega were just the most recent. Our projections indicate 3 other potential civilization-ending threats that could manifest within the next few centuries. The revelation sent another wave of shock through the Council. General Hayes elaborated with clinical precision. Humans aren't just offering protection against current threats. We're preparing for dangers that haven't emerged yet. Our technological development is specifically designed to counter projected future risks to galactic civilization. How can you plan for unknown threats? Dr. Yithlon asked. By developing capabilities that can adapt to any threat rather than weapons designed for specific enemies, Santos explained. The quantum manipulation technology we captured from the Omega will be integrated into defensive systems capable of protecting entire star systems. The dimensional shifting abilities will enable rapid response to threats anywhere in the galaxy. We're not just rebuilding galactic defenses, we're creating them for the first time. The scope of human planning became clear through hours of additional briefings. Every aspect of their 15-year integration had been preparation for exactly this moment. The emergence of an extinction-level threat that would force galactic civilization to accept human protection or face annihilation. But rather than conquest, they were offering partnership. Rather than domination, they were proposing expanded cooperation. The only requirement was honest acknowledgement of what humanity actually was. Not the galaxy's weakest species, but its strongest. Ambassador Chen delivered the final terms with diplomatic precision that barely concealed iron determination. Galactic civilization can continue exactly as it has for 15 years, with one significant change. No more pretending that humans are fragile academics who need protection. We're the species other species call when they face threats beyond their capabilities. Accept that reality, and everything else remains the same. The vote, when it came, was as unanimous as the authorization for human military intervention had been. Faced with the choice between accepting human hegemony or facing future extinction events without protection, every species chose survival. But the real surprise came during the implementation phase. Rather than imposing new restrictions or demanding tribute, humans actually expanded alien autonomy. Species that had been limited to specific territories were granted access to human-explored regions beyond the galactic rim. Technologies that had been classified were shared freely to accelerate scientific development. Cultural exchange programs were expanded rather than restricted. It's more efficient to have willing allies than subjugated populations, General Hayes explained to still confused alien leaders. Forced compliance requires constant oversight. Voluntary cooperation generates innovation that benefits everyone. 6 months after the Omega War ended, galactic civilization had not only recovered but was expanding faster than at any point in recorded history. Human-led exploration fleets were mapping new galaxy clusters. Joint research projects were developing technologies that none of the species could have achieved independently. Trade networks were reaching unprecedented levels of complexity and efficiency. The most telling indicator of success came from the youngest generation of alien citizens, who grew up knowing humans as protectors rather than protected academics. To them, the idea that these supremely capable beings had ever been considered weak seemed absurd. Commander Vex High, now serving as liaison to the Human Defense Coordination Council, summarized the transformation during a status briefing. In retrospect, the signs were always there. Their unusual problem-solving abilities, their unconventional approaches to challenges, their surprising resilience under pressure. We mistook adaptive superiority for intellectual curiosity. Secretary General Santos, attending the briefing via quantum communication, smiled with genuine warmth. Commander, evolution designed humans to survive anything the universe could devise to kill us. The fact that we can cooperate peacefully despite those capabilities is probably our species' greatest achievement. The Omega reminded us what we're capable of when cooperation fails. Let's all work to ensure we never need those capabilities again. But privately, in secure communications between human military commanders, a different conversation continued. Plans for expansion beyond the local galaxy group, development of technologies that could reshape matter at the stellar scale, and preparation for threats that might not emerge for thousands of years. Humanity had revealed itself as the galaxy's apex predator, but they were apex predators with cosmic ambitions. What they had built in the Milky Way was just the beginning. The universe was vast, full of wonders and dangers that hadn't been cataloged yet, and humans intended to be ready for all of them. The galaxy was safe. The question was whether the universe would be, once humanity decided to expand beyond their current territory. But that was a problem for future generations to solve. For now, galactic civilization prospered under the protection of predators who had chosen cooperation over conquest, and everyone agreed that was a far better outcome than extinction at the hands of beings who hadn't offered that choice. Even if they occasionally wondered what would happen if humanity ever decided to withdraw the offer.